we need to get people practicing the precursor skills so they can actually get to use in a practical competitive situation the takedowns that they practice. As we said earlier, Bernardo, it doesn't help to drill arm bars if that's all you drill.
Yeah, okay.
You need a lot more skills than that to get an arm bar to work in a competitive situation. Only when we embed our takedowns in the precursor skills of stance, grip, motion, breaking your opponent's balance, and getting to a throwing position, only then are you actually going to throw someone who doesn't want to be thrown.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%, John.
Now, Bernardo, the third thing that I think that Jiu-Jitsu has to do going forward, if we're going to improve the performance of students in the standing position, is we have to make a distinction between front takedowns and back takedowns, okay? As we said earlier, in the sport of judo, takedowns that throw your opponent into a prone position on their hands and knees score nothing. They don't even exist. It's not even a score. But in Jiu-Jitsu, it's a score. You hold their knee down on the floor for 3 seconds, you score the same as you would if you took them to their back from the front.
Yeah.
And so we need to teach two forms of takedown in Jiu-Jitsu. Takedowns from the front, where we throw our opponents on their back, and takedowns from the rear, where we throw them onto their hands and knees. And both must be practiced, both must be understood. Right now, if you look at Jiu-Jitsu, they have a kind of have a sense of this. They understand that there are takedowns from the back and some from the front, but this needs to be really clearly outlined. We need to have a curriculum of throws from the front and throws from the back. And once people understand that there's this whole category of takedowns out there, which has largely been ignored in Jiu-Jitsu instruction, and which are perfectly capable of scoring big points. And let's be honest, Bernardo, it's a lot easier to throw someone when you're behind them than it is when you're in front of them. Yeah. Let's be honest about that, okay? So if we can get students getting behind people and hitting these rare takedowns, they're going to suddenly find it's a lot easier to score points in the standing position than it is from when you're in front of someone battling it out chest to chest. So Jiu-Jitsu needs to develop a differentiated curriculum for front takedowns and back takedowns. I believe, Bernardo, if we can do these things, we can turn Jiu-Jitsu's standing game around. And just as we did with leg locks, take it from very poor performance to very, very good performance in a pretty short period of time. Yeah. I believe we can do the same thing with the standing game.
No, I agree, John. And I think the videos is a huge help for that, right? Because for one instructor to learn that and teach 50 students, it's not going to help that much. But if everybody watch the videos and the entire community is learning that's going to be a
look at how the community has responded to leg lock instruction. Like every day, people send in videos to me of them winning local competitions with heel hooks. And they're like, I learned this from the videos, and you're looking at it going, wow, it looks just like we taught it. Like it looks like a little Gordon Ryan out there, dude, hitting this. It looks like a little Gary Tonin or Nicky Ryan. It's crazy.
No,
and the community's done an amazing job of taking video instruction, and you see people who live in the middle of America who train in a small school hitting leg locks, and you're like, wow, this is impressive. Now, why can't they do the same thing with the standing position?
Yeah, no, I believe, John, and I think we're going to see this change.
I think there'll be a change too.
Yeah.
But as I said earlier, Bernardo, I do believe that progress is possible in this fashion, and my goal is particularly with this first volume of Feet to Floor, as I said earlier, is to get students who otherwise might have very little or even no standing skills and not even really practice it at all, confidently going against people their own size and their own skill level and scoring points in the standing position within 3 to 6 months. And I believe if we get a curriculum appropriate for the sport of Jiu-Jitsu based on the criteria that we talked about, and get people enthusiastic about this project, that this is a very, very doable goal. In volume 1, none of the takedowns require a huge investment in time. They are takedowns which have strong overlap with ground positions. And as such, many Jiu-Jitsu athletes already have pretty good expertise in them from groundwork, and it's not difficult for them to bring these into the standing position. And I'm very confident, based on my own coaching experience, that within that 3 to 6 months time frame, people who ordinarily don't really play the standing game much at all could be scoring consistently on people their own size and skill level in a standing game.
Oh, John, and I think like we were talking about that earlier, right? Like how the way you're structuring this, for example, the higher belt is also going to need the volume 1 to understand better these basic moves, but it's going to help even more the beginners, right?
Yes.
But once the beginners understand those concepts, they will be able to learn the volume 2 as well.
That's correct.
Which you're going to
Now,
go deeper.
as each volume comes out, I'm going to add progressively more technically demanding takedowns.
Yeah.
So when we get to volume 2, it's going to be a lot of work with the so-called sutemi-waza, or sacrifice throws. And anyone who knows me from coaching in the blue basement knows I am a huge fan of 3 sutemi-waza in particular. Tomoe-nage, the throw where we put a foot on the hip and send our man through. Sumigeshi, where we put a foot inside the hip and send the man over our shoulders. We sacrifice our back to the ground and throw them over our shoulders. And ukewaza, where we use a foot to trip our opponent's foot while we sacrifice to the ground and send them over. These 3 takedowns score very, very highly on the criteria we talked about for appropriateness for jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu players are already using them down on the floor, so I fully believe that within a fairly short time frame, jiu-jitsu players can be using these effectively. Now, they represent a higher skill level than the techniques we talked about in volume 1, but they're still very doable. This is not like a 10-year project or anything crazy like that. When we get into further volumes, then we'll be looking at takedowns which require more standing skills. It's going to be more of a long-term project. So we'll be looking at throws like osotogari and taitoshi, and these kataguruma throws like this, which are still very appropriate for the sport of jiu-jitsu and still easier to learn, especially the variations I'm going to teach. I honestly believe there are certain, within any given takedown, there are variations which are easier for most students to learn. So, for example, a standard osotogari, as it's standardly taught, is quite a difficult move to perform on a resisting opponent. You're on one leg and hopping around, and it's pretty easy for your opponent to counter you if you don't do things right from the start. But there are other variations of it, which I'll outline in the videos, which are considerably easier for most people to perform. And that's the direction I'll be pushing. As each video comes out, the skills required will be a little higher, and the projects will be slightly more long-term. But volume 1 is, in a sense, what you need to know right from the start to get good in a pretty short time frame and confidently go out and make grips with people, move them around, and start scoring points in the standing position. And then we go into volume 2, slightly more difficult, slightly longer time frame, and then culminating in volume 3, where now we're starting to talk about pretty high amplitude throws, where we're taking people down with some authority. And yes, there will be more back exposure, so there's more risk involved, but there's also the reward of a stronger takedown.
Yep.
You can throw someone with some authority.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, John.